Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Just Open It, the YouTube series in which I open recently acquired toys. My name is Russ. Thank you very much for watching this. I really appreciate it. If you're a fan of action figures or toy collecting or pop culture in general, please consider subscribing to my channel, Karaoke Fanboy TV. Every week I do indeed open a recently acquired toy, collectible, or action figure, and this week I am opening McFarlane Toys Superpowers Batman and Darkseid. I'm going to be honest, I don't think I would have purchased these action figures if they weren't under the Superpowers brand. But McFarlane did it. He appealed to the nostalgic inner child and pulled at my heartstrings. I so fondly remember the Superpowers action figure line. Superpowers went hand in hand with Masters of the Universe for me as a kid. I probably wouldn't love superheroes and comic books as much, specifically DC comic book characters, if it weren't for the Superpowers action figures line. They were just so well constructed, and they included little comic books that bought me in to who the characters were, what they represented, and their friendship in general as the Justice League, which I don't think was ever actually evoked in this action figure line. I don't think they ever used the words Justice League. We simply knew them then as the Superpowers or the Super Friends on TV, and the characters that they fought, the villains, eventually took the turn toward Jack Kirby's New Gods characters, specifically Darkseid and his minions from Apocalypse. But again, as a kid, I didn't know that. I just thought they were cosmic big bad villains. I didn't know that they were the creation of Jack Kirby, or that they starred in this epic multi-title comic book adventure. I just knew everything that DC had to offer for a few specific, poignant, but formulative years as superpowers. And McFarlane knows this, Todd. You got me, you sucked me in, and I had to buy these figures the day I'm recording this, today. And I'm so excited to open them. I thought I'm just going to start recording and go from there. But again, I don't think I would have purchased figures at this scale, with this kind of articulation, had the packaging not been reminiscent of that nostalgic Superpowers line. I'll be honest, just looking at Batman's head sculpt here, I'm not a fan. I don't like the way the ears, for lack of a better descriptor, on his cowl kind of point away from each other like that, and not in a kind of Batman 1939 original costume kind of way. I just don't care for the head sculpt. The color scheme is okay, but it's dark. I wish the blue and the gray contrasted themselves a little bit. Now, when it comes to Darkseid, I do like that it is a different look than his original Superpowers character. But I'm not sure exactly what era this is from. Is this the Jim Lee Darkseid from the New 52, as the packaging here implies, of the Batman with this Jim Lee card art? I guess. And then when you look at the back, you can see that it is reminiscent of the Superpowers line from the 80s in design and in this cool kind of bio area. But the original Superpowers figures, I think they offered 8 or 9. There were 5 heroes and 4 villains, if I remember correctly. This offers 3. Where this brand will succeed is in these vehicles. The Supermobile looks awesome. It's reminiscent of its late 70s, early 80s design, if I remember that correctly. And then the Batwing is kind of a retrofit of the 1989 Michael Keaton Tim Burton movie, in that it is a bat symbol shaped plane, but with that light blue, it kind of harkens back to the Batmobile of the Superpowers line. So I kind of wish what McFarlane was doing here was offering addendums to the original Superpowers in these kind of reincarnations of the vehicles, and then maybe different characters, picking up almost where the Superpowers left off. Now, I know you have to do these staple characters like Superman and Batman, but if maybe they were presented as a 21st century Batman or something like that, then I could appreciate that this is a continuation and not essentially a reboot. Also, it's noticeable that mini comics are not included. And McFarlane has recently released a line of toys that does include comic books, full-size comics, and super tiny action figures. I've seen them on the pegs. In my opinion, it's a bad decision. The action figures themselves don't look great. They look poorly constructed. And then the comic books that are included are just reprints of, I guess you can call them modern classics, like Batman, I think it's number 608, which is the first part of the Hush storyline. Jim Lee and Jeff Loeb's, again, modern classic story there. But for the issues not to be standalone, so that a kid could find a quick introduction to these characters and want to go to the comic book store and buy more, versus this weird, we're gonna drop you into the middle of continuity. We're gonna introduce characters to you in these stories that aren't necessarily ever gonna be depicted as action figures. Like, I believe Killer Croc is in that issue, Batman 608. Are they going to release a Killer Croc figure so that a kid that reads that comic and loves it could eventually kind of reenact that adventure? That was such a key part of what superpowers represented to me as a kid. And I think that philosophy is gone. It's either perceived as too campy or old-fashioned, but that's the only way you're going to create a synthesis between a kid buying these action figures based solely on the brands, based solely on the name recognition of Batman, and I presume Darkseid from what, the Justice League Unlimited cartoon or the Zack Snyder cut of Justice League. How a kid knows who Darkseid even is, I don't know. So again, for there to be no comic, for there to be a brief bio in the back that's effective, but does it create a buy-in beyond this product? Not that that's even McFarlane's responsibility. They just want to sell toys, but Superpowers did it for me. Masters of the Universe created a lifelong fan in me by building a mythology with standalone stories that created a continuity, not so much that they were all to be continued, but that the characters were consistent in design and personality and morality. So I'm just not, that's not coming from these figures for me. This is meant to appeal to me as an adult and not to a kid 12 plus, as the package implies. And 12 plus, there are no small accessories here for a child to choke on. Why isn't this 6 or 8 plus? I don't get it. I don't get it anymore. And I just had to pick up these figures to see if maybe they would convert me. Maybe once I hold the figure in hand, as I held these as a kid. Yes, I do have my original Batman and Darkseid here from the original Superpowers line. Now, they're sans cape, obviously, because those were hard to retain. And you could see the looseness of the joints and whatnot. This Batman, I think... Oh, we have a little action capability here when you squeeze his legs. But not a lot. You can see what I'm talking about with the ears. Again, I hate that description, but the points on his cowl is they're much more parallel than the sculpt here, where they seem to just diverge a little bit, a little too much. Maybe it's the width between them, I don't know. But this to me was Batman when I was a kid. This was the definitive Batman. The blue, the gray, the capsuled utility belt with the big buckle. This was what I perceived as Batman for a very long time. And it's Neil Adams, it's Jim Aparo. You know, it's just that definitive era of pre-Dark Knight Returns, but post-Batman 66, where you have this kind of, ultimate man that's a vigilante and building a family with Alfred. And at that point, you just had Dick Grayson and Jason Todd and Barbara as Batgirl and Commissioner Gordon. It was a simpler time. So we're almost 10 minutes into this video, and I haven't even opened these figures yet. So I'm diving in now, opening first Batman, then Darkseid. And let's just see if these figures evoke the same feelings I get when I hold the originals. There's already kind of a stiffness to the package here, but it makes me wonder if these figures were made with the intention of being open. Or is the design of the packaging its primary selling point, so a nostalgic fan like me gets excited to see this brand and some Jim Lee art and the McFarlane Toys logo, all of which do excite me when combined like this. But okay. Open. Batman is removed. I'm already seeing something here that is... There is a, I don't know what you call these, but they hold price tags on clothes. This little T-shaped plastic piece. That is keeping the cape in place with the plastic bubble. And I didn't bring a scissor. You know, if I'm a child opening this toy in my bedroom, I probably don't have a scissor handy. So I just had to pull it crudely and make a significant hole in Batman's cape. I don't get it. I don't understand why these need to be packaged in such a way that a kid can't get home and rip into them and start playing in seconds. But now that that is removed, pulling Batman out, and the cape just is detached from Batman. Did I break it already? Oh, okay. So the Superpowers figures came with cloth capes. This feels a little velvety, and it has that old school, so I do dig this, it has that old school plastic ring on the collar, so I would adhere this to Batman's neck. And so let's see how easy that is, because this does evoke that kind of feeling from back in the day. And there it is. So the cape is now attached to Batman, if you can see that there. There is no action feature when you squeeze the legs, as the original figures had. And I'm moving the points of articulation. And the legs actually look like they could practically be the same mold as the original Superpowers figures. When I hold these up side by side here, this might be my thumbnail if these figures come into focus here. But the legs are very similarly sculpted, and I do appreciate that. I'm just noticing now the dust on this Batman figure. Oof, that's bad. I wonder how much of that the camera picked up. Oh, that's rough. But he was sitting in the Batmobile, so there's probably just a pocket of dust in the cockpit there of the Batmobile. But the figure is heavy, and it feels very stiff as I move the joints here. The arms a little less so, but the legs definitely kind of stiff. And he just looks very stout. You know, a very barrel-chested Batman here, compared to kind of the tapering of the waist that you get with this version here. So I'm not sure how I feel about this. Decent enough display piece, playability for a kid. You know, if kids are getting used to the contemporary points of articulation that are found in Marvel Legends or McFarlane's regular or standard-sized DC multiverse figures, right? Or Masters of the Universe Origins that I love. If kids are getting used to those points of articulation and that kind of posability and potential playability, do they look at this as we would look at a rotary telephone or something? Is this completely outdated to them now? Or does the simplicity of this speak more to their ability to play with it? Could they play with this more easily? So I'm wondering that as I mess with this figure a little bit. And the head still strikes me as oddly constructed there, but see if I can contrast it with my pale white skin. Okay, let's move on to Darkseid here, because I don't want to I don't want to make this a 20-minute video, but we're pushing it. So the original Darkseid had a power feature where when you squeezed his legs, his arms would raise like menacingly, I guess as dictators do. But then there's also this plastic piece in his head where when light, and you can kind of get this with my ring light, when light shines through this, his eyes appear to glow. Light comes in through this plastic piece, and it's one solid piece in his head, I presume. So the cutouts of his eyes here have that kind of glow effect, and it's very cool. I remember loving that as a kid, not even realizing that this was representative of the Omega Beam that, again, creator Jack Kirby created. And I kind of wish that he got some credit in any of this packaging, but that's a slippery slope. You start to credit Jack Kirby here, then you got to credit Bob Kane and Bill Finger here, and then it's a whole thing. And I don't know if the fine print of these packages do that in any way. It doesn't look like it. So, okay, let's get into Darkseid here. Easy enough to extract without a cloth cape, and that Darkseid did come with a cloth cape back in the day, but without a cloth cape, no rubber bands, boom, right out of the package. It should be that easy every time, and I don't know why it isn't, but okay, I have Darkseid in hand. Just gonna get rid of some of this here. And definitely kind of feels old school. The knees have that kind of clicking rotary joint that the DC Multiverse figures have that I don't care for. So at this scale, he's obviously bigger than Batman. You're getting close to the multiverse height of this figure, right, with this figure. So it's this kind of weird. If I stood him next to a multiverse figure, he'd probably look dwarfed, whereas here he just looks maybe a head or two taller. So that's Darkseid. I like it. It's these are chunky. McFarlane's take on superpowers is chunky. Everything feels chunkier, thicker. I don't know if that's meant to evoke the nostalgia of these figures, but this is a lighter plastic. It's lasted 30 plus years, so there's durability here. And what's interesting is they're about the same height, which is interesting to me because this just feels smaller. I don't know why, because again, it's the same height. Maybe the size of the head, this kind of cowl piece, created such a dominant look for Darkseid here. Whereas this helmet kind of hugs the contours of his face, and it just creates a less menacing persona to me. So what's interesting is that you go with the brighter colors on Darkseid than Batman. So if I presented you these two characters without any context, you know nothing of their history, you know nothing of who they are other than this initial design, and I said, who's the good guy, who's the bad guy? I don't know if you could determine that. If I presented that they were on the same team, based solely on their color schemes, you could probably come to that conclusion. Now, with these two figures, Batman is still gray and blue, but brighter than the slate gray and the darker blue of Darkseid's costume. So you could distinguish potentially hero from villain here. I guess what the Superpowers brand ultimately presents me with is the shift in sensibility when it comes to action figures, I presume targeting kids, or have we just completely turned to that corner where the stuff that appealed to me when I was younger is now pure commercial fodder. Nostalgia is king and key to selling anything, and there is really no progression in the presentation of these classic heroes. But to sell anything off the pegs now, it has to appeal exclusively to me, a 42-year-old guy. So even things shrouded in marketing to youth is actually marketing to my youth, not today's youth. And when you do have something that's presented to kids, it's smaller, it's cheaply constructed, it's bound to break by their hands. Whereas these figures lasted a long time. I could be making some broad generalities here, some grand judgments, but ultimately, I think McFarlane's take on the superpowers action figure line is it's going to find its strength in the vehicles. I'm excited to get those, and I'll only get the Superman figure to ride in his Supermobile. So again, these figures, you could see the hole in Batman's cape that I had to make to remove it from the package, and that's my ultimate feeling on these figures. Is there's just a little hole here that should have been filled by either a sense of overwhelming nostalgia, yeah, these figures are so much like the ones I had when I was a kid, I'm excited to get them all, or this sense of progression where, wow, they took things to the next level, and these figures are truly a superpowers for the 21st century. I'm not getting either sensation here. I just have a Batman figure and I just have a Darkseid figure, and my love of these characters is what's prevailing more than anything else, and that has very little to do with McFarlane Toys, which is a great company, or the Superpowers brand, which has which is a powerful vehicle for nostalgia. So maybe Wave 2 will change my mind when it comes to the figures, but ultimately the strength in Superpowers' superpower is going to be in its vehicles, and I'm resting my laurels on that. Of course, that remains to be seen. I haven't seen those vehicles hit the Phoenix market yet, but when they do, I will get them. I will bring them onto this this channel here, and I'm gonna hold that Supermobile right here, and I'm gonna say, you know what? Just open it. I'll catch you next time.